Story number 1. The Phantom in the Desert. Winter in Nevada was a deceptive time. Beneath the blanket of snow and the crisp, clear nights lay a desert landscape that transformed with the seasons. The vast expanse of sand dunes, typically scorching under the relentless sun, now shimmered under the icy grip of winter. It was during one such unforgiving season that my friends and I decided to embark on a journey that would forever alter our perception of reality. I had always been an adventurer at heart, drawn to the solitude and raw beauty of the desert. The Nevada desert, with its undulating dunes and endless horizons, offered a perfect escape from the chaos of everyday life. My companions, Jake, Lisa, and Mark, shared my passion for exploration, and together, we sought the thrill of uncovering the desert's hidden secrets. Our trip began on a chilly November morning, the air crisp and invigorating. Equipped with sturdy boots, warm clothing, and an array of camping gear, we set out with high spirits and eager anticipation. The plan was simple: hike deeper into the desert than we ever had before, camp under the stars, and document our experiences along the way. The first few days were idyllic. We traversed vast stretches of white sand, our footsteps leaving temporary imprints that were soon erased by shifting winds. The nights were particularly magical, with the Milky Way stretching across the sky in brilliant detail, and the cold adding a sharp clarity to the stillness of the desert. On the fourth day, as we ventured further into the heart of the desert, the landscape began to change. The dunes grew taller and more imposing, their peaks piercing the night sky like frozen sentinels. The isolation was profound, the only sounds the whispering wind and the crunch of snow beneath our feet. It was here, amidst the towering dunes, that the legend of the Phantom in the desert began to take shape. We had heard the stories from local townsfolk, tales of a ghostly figure that appeared on moonlit nights, standing motionless atop a dune. According to legend, this apparition was the spirit of a traveler who had lost his way during a fierce blizzard decades ago, forever doomed to wander the desert in search of an escape that would never come. Skeptics dismissed it as mere folklore, but the unnerving accounts left an indelible mark on our minds. That night, as we set up camp beneath a particularly imposing dune, the temperature plummeted, and the wind picked up, howling through the desert with a mournful intensity. We huddled around the fire, sharing stories and laughing to keep our spirits high. The darkness outside was absolute, the snow muffling all sounds except the relentless storm. Around midnight, Lisa was the first to notice it, a faint, bluish glow in the distance, emanating from atop a distant dune. We all stared in silent awe as the light pulsed gently, casting eerie shadows across the snow. Jake, ever the skeptic, suggested it was a trick of the light or perhaps a reflection of our campfire. But there was something unsettling about the way the glow seemed to move with purpose, drawing us towards it. Curiosity overcame caution, and we decided to investigate, bundling up against the biting cold. We followed the light, our breaths visible in the frigid air. The snow crunched under our boots as we made our way towards the source, the glow growing brighter with each step. The landscape around us was surreal, the familiar dunes now transformed into ghostly apparitions under the ethereal light. As we approached the dune from which the light emanated, the temperature seemed to drop even further, the air growing thick with an unnatural chill. There, standing atop the snow-covered mound, was the Phantom, a tall, indistinct figure clad in what appeared to be tattered winter gear. His eyes, piercing shade of red, seemed to glow with an otherworldly intensity, fixed unwaveringly on us. The silence was deafening, the only sound our own ragged breaths and the distant howl of the storm. "Did you see that?" Mark whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind. Jake, usually composed, looked visibly shaken. "We need to get out of here," he said, his voice tinged with fear. But before we could retreat, the Phantom began to move. His steps were slow and deliberate, each one leaving a trail of frost that quickly disappeared beneath the shifting snow. We stood frozen, unable to tear our eyes away from the spectral figure as he continued his silent march towards us. As he drew closer, the ground beneath him seemed to warp and distort, the snow swirling around him in unnatural patterns. His presence was suffocating, the cold intensifying with each passing moment. Then, without warning, he stopped mere feet away, his red eyes boring into ours with a penetrating gaze that seemed to pierce our very souls. The whispers began then, a chorus of faint, sorrowful voices that seemed to emanate from the very fabric of the desert. Lost, alone, forever. The words were incomprehensible, yet the anguish behind them was unmistakable. The phantom raised his hand, pointing towards the horizon where the dunes stretched endlessly into the darkness. Understanding dawned on me. This was more than just a ghost story, it was a plea for help, a desperate attempt to communicate with the living. "Can you help us?" I asked, my voice trembling but resolute. The phantom remained silent, but his expression softened, the intense red of his eyes dimming to a sorrowful glow. Slowly, he extended his hand, palm open in a gesture of surrender. As I reached out to touch it, the world around us began to dissolve, the snow and storm fading into a hazy mist. Suddenly, we were no longer in the desolate desert but standing on a different landscape altogether, a barren, frozen wasteland under a perpetually twilight sky. The air was frigid, the silence oppressive. The phantom stood before us, no longer a distant figure but a tangible presence beside us. "This is where we remain," he said, his voice echoing in the icy expanse. Trapped by the storm, unable to move on, Jake shivered, pulling his coat tighter around him. "Is there a way to free you?" Elias nodded slowly. "Only by acknowledging our existence and remembering our stories. We cannot be forgotten, for to be forgotten is to fade into the void." Lisa, always the empathetic one, stepped forward. "We remember you. We hear your pleas." The ground beneath us began to shift, the frozen landscape morphing into a swirling vortex of light and darkness. "Thank you," Elias whispered, his form beginning to dissolve into the ether. "May you carry our memories forward." As he faded, the vortex expanded, enveloping us in a blinding light. The cold lifted, replaced by a warm, comforting sensation that spread through our bodies. When the light subsided, we found ourselves back in the Nevada desert, the storm having passed and the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. Exhausted and bewildered, we made our way back to camp, the memory of the frosty pursuer etched into our minds. The footprints we had left in the snow led straight into the nothingness of the desert, a stark reminder of the encounter we had just experienced. No trace of the phantom remained, only the lingering sense of his presence and the haunting whispers that echoed in our minds. In the days that followed, we shared our story with the locals, who listened with a mix of skepticism and belief. The legend of the frosty pursuer took on a new dimension, our first-hand account adding depth to the existing folklore. It became a tale of remembrance and respect, a reminder of the souls lost to the unforgiving winter and the enduring power of memory. Years later, whenever winter winds sweep through the Nevada desert, I still think back to that night. The frosty pursuer is no longer just a ghostly figure on a snow-covered dune, but a symbol of the unbreakable bond between the living and the dead. His story serves as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of honoring those who came before us. And so, as I continue my adventures, venturing into the unknown with a newfound respect for the legends that linger in the shadows, I carry with me the lessons learned from the frosty pursuer. In the heart of the desert, amidst the snow and silence, I found a connection to the past and a deeper understanding of the mysteries that lie beyond our comprehension. The frosty pursuer may remain a haunting presence in the winter nights of Nevada, but his legacy lives on in the stories we tell and the memories we cherish. Story number 2. The Phantom Bus. Winter in Alaska was a relentless force, a whiteout that transformed the vast wilderness into an unending expanse of snow and silence. As an avid hunter, I thrived on the solitude and the raw beauty that the Alaskan wilderness offered. My solitary expeditions were a form of meditation, a way to disconnect from the chaos of everyday life and reconnect with nature's primal rhythms. But nothing could have prepared me for the night I encountered the phantom bus, a legend whispered among locals, now etched into my very soul. It was late November, and the first heavy snowstorm of the season had settled over the Denali National Park. The weather forecast had predicted a blizzard, but I had been confident in my preparations. My gear was meticulously packed: a sturdy rifle, ample supplies, a reliable GPS, and my trusted camera to document any wildlife I might encounter. I set out just as dusk began to fall, the sky painted in hues of pink and orange that quickly gave way to the deepening darkness. The trail was familiar, a well-trodden path that meandered through dense pine forests and over frozen streams. I had hiked this route numerous times, but the storm's arrival added an element of unpredictability that kept me vigilant. The wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the biting chill that signaled the onset of winter's fury. I pressed on, my breath visible in the frigid air, each step crunching loudly in the stillness. As midnight approached, the storm intensified, snowflakes swirling violently around me, reducing visibility to mere feet ahead. My GPS had lost signal hours earlier. Swallowed by the whiteout, the trail became obscured, and the familiar landmarks were hidden beneath thick layers of snow. Panic began to creep in as I realized I was losing my way. I decided to set up a temporary camp, hoping to wait out the worst of the storm and regain my bearings in the morning. I found a relatively flat spot near an old logging trail and began to set up my tent. The biting cold seeped through my layers, and I struggled to get warm enough to sleep. The howling wind seemed to carry distant, almost imperceptible sounds, whispers that danced on the edge of hearing. I dismissed them as the wind playing tricks on my mind, a product of prolonged isolation and fatigue. Hours passed in restless sleep, the storm's rage unabated. Just as I began to drift into a troubled slumber, a faint light appeared in the distance, cutting through the whiteout like a beacon. My eyes snapped open, heart pounding. I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, and stared into the blinding storm. There it was, a bus, old and weathered, its paint peeling and windows fogged over. It stood motionless on the side of the trail, its headlights dim but unmistakably on. Confusion and curiosity warred within me. Why would a bus be stranded in the middle of a snowstorm, miles away from the nearest town? Gathering my courage, I decided to investigate. The cold was unbearable, each step a struggle against the deepening snow. As I approached the bus, the storm seemed to subside slightly, the wind dying down as if reluctant to disturb the scene. The bus was a relic from another era, its doors slightly ajar as if inviting me in. I hesitated, the legends of the phantom bus resurfacing in my mind. According to local folklore, the phantom bus was the spirit of a long-abandoned route, haunted by the souls of those who never made it home during the treacherous winter storms. Drivers who dared to investigate reported eerie occurrences, unexplained lights, ghostly passengers, and a feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. Shaking off the unease, I approached the bus, flashlight in hand. The interior was surprisingly well preserved, a stark contrast to the dilapidated exterior. The seats were clean, the dashboard intact, and a faint scent of old leather and wood lingered in the air. It was as if the bus had been frozen in time, a snapshot of a moment that should have never been forgotten. I stepped inside, the door creaking shut behind me, and took a few tentative steps down the aisle. The faint sound of soft music played from an old radio, its static-laden tune both soothing and unsettling. I glanced around, noting the empty seats and the darkened windows that offered no glimpse of the outside world. My curiosity pushed me further into the bus, towards the front where the driver's seat awaited. As I reached the front, the temperature dropped sharply, my breath visible in the beam of my flashlight. I noticed a diary lying on the passenger seat, its pages yellowed with age. Intrigued, I picked it up and began to read. The entries were dated back to the late 1940s, chronicling the daily lives of the bus drivers and their passengers. The last entry was particularly chilling. December 15th, 1949. The storm is fiercer than ever. We're running low on fuel, and the passengers are growing restless. The roads are impassable, and I fear we won't make it back tonight. Pray for our safe return. A sense of dread settled over me as I realized the bus was more than just a ghostly apparition. It was a vessel carrying the unresolved anguish of those who had perished in the storm. The realization hit me hard, and I felt a presence behind me. I turned slowly, heart racing, and saw a shadowy figure standing in the doorway, its red eyes glowing ominously in the darkness. "Why are you here?" the figure demanded, its voice echoing through the silent bus. I didn't mean to intrude," I stammered, backing away slowly. "I was caught in the storm and saw your bus." The figure stepped forward, its expression sorrowful yet stern. "You must help us. We are trapped here, unable to move on. Our journey was cut short by the storm, and we remain in this limbo, waiting for someone to acknowledge our plight." Fear mingled with compassion as I realized the gravity of the situation. "What can I do to help?" The figure gestured towards the back of the bus, where a faded map lay on the floor. "Find our final destination. Complete our journey. Only then can we find peace and return to the light." Determined to assist these restless souls, I took the map, studying its intricate details. It depicted a route that led to a small, forgotten town nestled deep within the mountains, a place that seemed to exist outside of time. According to the diary, this town was the bus's intended destination, but the storm had prevented them from reaching it. With renewed purpose, I set out to fulfill the bus's unfinished business. The storm had abated, but the cold lingered, a constant reminder of the night's eerie events. I knew the journey ahead would be perilous, but the thought of helping these lost souls gave me the strength to push forward. The path to the forgotten town was treacherous, the snow-covered trails winding through dense forests and over rugged terrain. The map guided me through the wilderness, each step bringing me closer to the truth behind the phantom bus. As I trekked deeper into the mountains, the air grew colder, the silence more profound, broken only by the crunch of snow beneath my boots. After hours of relentless hiking, I finally arrived at the town depicted on the map. It was a ghost town, abandoned long ago, with buildings covered in layers of snow and ice. The remnants of a once thriving community lay frozen in time, the streets empty and silent. In the center of the town stood the old train station, this platform a relic of the past. I knew this was the final destination the bus had been seeking. The realization dawned on me that I needed to perform a ritual to release the spirits and allow them to move on. Drawing upon the knowledge from the diary and local folklore, I set up a small altar on the platform, lighting candles and arranging offerings to honor the lost souls. As I began the ritual, the air grew heavy with anticipation. The sky darkened, and the temperature plummeted, the snow swirling around me in a frenzied dance. The phantom bus materialized at the end of the platform, its headlights casting a ghostly glow across the desolate town. The spirits of the passengers gathered around, their expressions a mix of hope and sorrow. I recited the final lines of the diary, my voice steady despite the cold that threatened to numb my throat. "May you find the peace you seek, and may your journey be complete." A profound silence enveloped the town, the only sound the soft crackling of the candles. Suddenly, the spirits began to fade, their forms dissolving into the air like mist in the morning sun. The bus shimmered, its presence becoming less distinct as the last of the souls found their release. The phantom bus slowly disappeared, the town returning to its tranquil stillness. The temperature began to rise, the oppressive cold lifting as dawn broke over the mountains, casting a warm glow that seemed to breathe new life into the forgotten town. Exhausted but fulfilled, I made my way back to the bus, which had vanished along with the spirits. The journey had been harrowing, But knowing that I had helped these lost souls find peace brought a sense of closure that was both comforting and humbling. As I drove back through the now tranquil wilderness, the memory of the phantom bus lingered in my mind. The experience had changed me, deepening my understanding of the thin veil that separates the living from the dead and the importance of honoring the unresolved. Back in town, I shared my story with the locals, ensuring that the legend of the phantom bus would be remembered not as a tale of fear, but as a testament to compassion and the enduring human spirit. The house of cold lights and the frosty pursuer were now part of our collective memory. Stories of loss and redemption that resonated with anyone who dared to listen. Every winter, as the first snowflakes begin to fall, I think back to that night in the Alaskan wilderness. The phantom bus remains a haunting reminder of the mysteries that lie beyond our understanding and the lives touched by tragedy. And as I continue my solitary expeditions, I carry with me the lessons learned from the lost souls of the phantom bus. Lessons of courage, empathy, and the unbreakable bond that connects us all. Even in the most desolate of places, the wilderness of Alaska, with its endless expanse and silent beauty, holds countless secrets waiting to be uncovered. But some stories, like that of the phantom bus, are reminders that even in the vastest solitude, the echoes of the past linger, yearning to be heard and honored. And so, I journey on, ever mindful of the spirits that watch over the snow-covered trails, hoping to bridge the gap between our worlds and offer peace to those who are lost. Story number 3. The Light on the Sea. Winter in the Bermuda Triangle was a paradoxical season. While most of the world grappled with freezing temperatures and snow-covered landscapes, the Triangle remained a mysterious realm where weather patterns defied logic and the ocean held secrets that begged to be uncovered. As a seasoned captain with years of experience navigating these treacherous waters, I had come to respect the Triangle's unpredictable nature. But nothing could have prepared me for the night the light on the sea changed everything. It was late November, a time when the Triangle's usual storms were calming, making way for a deceptive stillness that beckoned adventurers and thrill-seekers alike. My vessel, the Seafarer's Hope, was a sturdy trawler equipped for long voyages, designed to withstand the harshest of conditions. I was on a solo expedition, driven by a desire to map uncharted territories and uncover the Triangle's elusive mysteries. The journey had been uneventful for the most part. The sea was calm, the skies clear, and the stars shone brightly overhead, guiding me through the vast expanse of water. I spent my days charting new courses, my nights gazing at the celestial tapestry above, finding solace in the rhythm of the waves and the serenity of isolation. On the third night, as I steered the Seafarer's Hope through a particularly dense cluster of islands, a sudden shift in the atmosphere signaled the onset of something extraordinary. The temperature dropped sharply, and an unnatural stillness enveloped the sea. My breath became visible in the frigid air, each exhale a fleeting ghost against the dark waters. I adjusted the ship's course, seeking shelter from the impending storm. But the skies remained stubbornly clear, the horizon untouched by clouds. Just as I was about to settle in for the night, a faint, ethereal glow appeared in the distance. At first, I dismissed it as a distant buoy or perhaps a reflection of the moonlight on the water. But as minutes turned into hours, the light persisted, moving steadily towards my position. Its hue was unlike anything I had seen before, a soft, pulsating blue that seemed to breathe with a life of its own. Curiosity overcame caution, and I decided to investigate, navigating the Seafarer's Hope closer to the light. I felt an inexplicable pull, a magnetic force drawing me towards its source. The sea around me grew eerily calm, the waves barely whispering against the hull. As I approached, the light intensified, revealing the outline of an old, seemingly abandoned bus floating on the water's surface. The bus was a relic from another era, its paint peeling and windows fogged over with years of neglect. It bobbed gently with the rhythm of the waves, as if beckoning me to come closer. My heart pounded in my chest, a mixture of fear and fascination gripping me. Legends of phantom vehicles haunting the Bermuda Triangle had always intrigued me, but seeing one with my own eyes was something entirely different. I anchored the Seafarer's Hope nearby and donned my heavy coat, the cold biting through the layers. With a flashlight in hand, I carefully boarded the ghostly bus, the door creaking ominously as I pushed it open. The interior was surprisingly well preserved, a stark contrast to its dilapidated exterior. The seats were covered in a thick layer of dust, and the faint scent of aged fabric lingered in the air. As I stepped inside, the temperature plummeted further, my breath now a constant mist in the freezing atmosphere. I scanned the interior with my flashlight, searching for any signs of life or movement, but found nothing, only the remnants of a bygone era. The bus seemed frozen in time, a silent witness to countless journeys that never reached their destinations. Determined to uncover the truth, I began exploring the bus, moving from one compartment to another. Each section revealed more about its mysterious past: old maps, faded photographs, and personal belongings scattered across the seats. It was as if the passengers had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only traces of their existence. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by a soft, haunting melody emanating from the front of the bus. I followed the sound, my flashlight guiding me towards the driver's seat. The radio crackled to life, playing an old tune that seemed to resonate with the very soul of the triangle. I reached out to adjust the volume, but my hand passed through the dashboard as if it were made of mist. A chill ran down my spine as I turned to leave, but the bus seemed to have other plans. The doors slammed shut behind me, the sound echoing through the empty compartments. Panic surged through me as I realized I was trapped inside the spectral vehicle. The temperature continued to drop, the cold now suffocating, making it hard to breathe. Desperate to escape, I tried to force the doors open, but they remained steadfastly closed. The haunting melody grew louder, the notes now interspersed with faint whispers that seemed to come from all around me. The air thickened with an otherworldly presence, pressing down on me from every direction. "Help us!" The voices echoed, their tones filled with sorrow and despair. "Don't leave us!" I felt a presence behind me, a cold breath brushing against my neck. Turning slowly, I saw a shadowy figure standing in the aisle, its eyes glowing a fiery red that pierced through the darkness. It was a man, his form indistinct and ethereal, yet his gaze held a haunting intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling with fear. The figure did not respond with words. Instead, it raised a hand, pointing towards the back of the bus where a door stood slightly ajar. My heart raced as I followed its gesture. Inching closer to the door, the whispers grew louder, the air around me thick with an oppressive sadness. Inside the compartment, I found a diary lying on a seat, its pages yellowed with age. I picked it up, the brittle pages crinkling under my touch. The entries detailed the lives of the bus's passengers, families, friends, individuals embarking on journeys that were meant to be ordinary but were forever marred by tragedy. The last entry was particularly chilling. December 14th, 1950. The storm is unlike any we've ever faced. The roads are blocked, and we're running low on supplies. We pray for a safe passage, but the darkness seems endless. May God protect us from the wrath of the sea. A sense of dread settled over me as I realized the bus was a vessel for lost souls, eternally trapped in the Bermuda Triangle's embrace. The Phantom Bus, as it was now known, was cursed to roam the waters, its passengers forever seeking a way to break free from their spectral prison. Determined to help these restless spirits, I focused my energy on understanding the curse. The diary hinted at a ritual, an ancient practice that could sever the bond between the living and the dead. But the details were vague, the instructions incomplete. I knew time was running out the longer I stayed, the deeper the curse would embed itself into my own soul. With the figure still watching me, I began to piece together the ritual. It required a symbolic gesture of release, a way to honor the memories of those who had perished and offer them the peace they so desperately sought. Gathering my courage, I spoke aloud, reading the fragmented instructions from the diary. By acknowledging your suffering and honoring your journey, I release you from this eternal cycle. May you find peace beyond the veil. As I chanted the final words, the temperature rose slightly, the oppressive cold easing as a warm breeze swept through the bus. The figure of the man began to dissolve, his form fading into the air as the whispers turned into soft sighs of relief. The doors creaked open, the way back to the living world now unobstructed. Without looking back, I stepped out of the bus, the cold night air embracing me once more. The phantom bus shimmered and vanished into the darkness, leaving behind only the faintest echo of its haunting melody. The storm had subsided, the sea calm and still, as if the triangle itself had acknowledged the release of its lost souls. I made my way back to the seafarer's hope, the memory of the phantom bus etched into my mind. The journey back was peaceful, the once intimidating waters now serene and welcoming. As dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight pierced through the horizon, casting a golden glow over the tranquil sea. Reflecting on the night's events, I realized the true power of the Bermuda Triangle. It was not just a place of mystery and danger, but also a realm where lost souls sought connection and closure. The phantom bus was a testament to the enduring human spirit, a reminder that even in the face of death and despair, there is always a chance for redemption and peace. In the weeks that followed, I shared my story with the local community and fellow adventurers, ensuring that the legend of the Hellbells and the phantom bus would be remembered not as tales of fear, but as narratives of compassion and the relentless pursuit of peace. The Bermuda Triangle remained as enigmatic as ever, its secrets guarded by the waves and the whispers of those who had been lost. Every time I sail through those icy waters, I carry with me the lessons learned from the night the light on the sea revealed its haunting truth. The phantom bus may have been freed, but its legacy lives on, a beacon for those who seek to understand the mysteries that lie beneath the surface and the spirits that roam the endless sea. And so, as I continue my voyages, navigating the treacherous yet mesmerizing waters of the Bermuda Triangle, I remain ever vigilant, ever respectful of the stories that unfold in the shadows. The light on the sea serves as a reminder that some legends are rooted in truth, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to seek them out. And in honoring those lost souls, I find my own sense of purpose and connection to the vast, untamed wilderness that calls to the deepest parts of my soul. Story number 4. The Mysterious Mountaineer. Winter in Colorado was unforgiving, a relentless force that transformed the majestic Rockies into a labyrinth of ice and snow. The peaks stood like ancient sentinels, their jagged edges piercing the heavens, while the valleys below were cloaked in a silent, white shroud. As an avid mountaineer, I thrived on the solitude and the raw beauty that these mountains offered. My friends Sarah, Mike, and Jake shared my passion, and together, we sought the thrill of conquering Colorado's most challenging climbs. It was early December when we decided to tackle Mount Elbert, the highest peak in the Rockies. The weather forecast had predicted a severe snowstorm, but we were undeterred, equipped with the latest gear, enough supplies to last us several days, and a map meticulously charted from past expeditions. We set out with high spirits and unwavering determination. The first few days were grueling yet exhilarating. We navigated treacherous slopes, crossed icy crevasses, and marveled at the breathtaking vistas that stretched endlessly around us. As we ascended higher, the air grew thinner, and the cold intensified, biting through our layers of clothing with merciless precision. Yet, the camaraderie and the shared goal kept us moving forward, step by arduous step. On the 4th day, as we approached a particularly steep and narrow ridge, the weather took a dramatic turn. Dark clouds loomed overhead, and the wind began to howl like a living creature, whipping the snow into frenzied spirals. Visibility dropped to mere feet, and the temperature plummeted, making every breath a struggle. We knew we had to find shelter before the storm fully unleashed its fury. Spotting a narrow crevice between two large boulders, we hurriedly made our way towards it, the storm raging around us. The crevice offered minimal protection, but it was better than being exposed to the elements. We huddled together, sharing body heat and listening to the relentless battering of the storm outside. Exhausted, we took turns keeping watch, the howling wind and swirling snow masking any sounds from the outside world. Hours passed in tense silence until, amidst the cacophony of the storm, Sarah was the first to notice it, a faint, solitary figure standing at the far end of the crevice. At first, it was just a shadow against the blinding whiteout, but as we strained our eyes, the figure became more distinct. It was a man, seemingly oblivious to the raging storm, standing motionless on a small outcropping of rock protruding from the snow-covered ground. "Do you guys see that?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. I nodded, squinting into the distance. The man's presence was both eerie and inexplicable. He was dressed in an old-fashioned parka, his face obscured by the hood, yet his eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, a haunting red that seemed to pierce through the snowstorm. "Jake, ever the skeptic," muttered. "Probably just another hiker caught in the storm. Someone else like us." But there was something unsettling about the way the man stood there, his gaze fixed unwaveringly on us. We exchanged uneasy glances, the rational part of my mind telling me it was merely a coincidence, while a deeper, more primal fear gnawed at my instincts. As the night wore on, the storm showed no signs of abating. The man's figure remained steadfast, his presence growing more imposing as the hours passed. We tried to distract ourselves, sharing stories and memories to keep our minds off the strange apparition. Yet, the feeling of being watched persisted, a lingering unease that settled over us like the heavy blanket of snow outside. Around midnight, a sudden gust of wind howled through the crevice, and the man began to move. He turned slowly, his red eyes locking onto ours with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. Without a word, he started to walk towards a precarious ledge, his movements deliberate and unervingly calm despite the raging storm. "Should we follow him?" Mike asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Sarah shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. "No way, he could be leading us into danger." But curiosity and a sense of responsibility pulled me towards the edge of the crevice. "We can't just leave him here. What if he needs help?" Ignoring Sarah's protests, I edged closer to the ledge, the wind buffeting me violently. As I approached, the man vanished, as if swallowed by the storm itself. In his place, a series of deep, almost ritualistic footprints appeared on the snow, leading directly into a narrow crevasse that descended into the abyss below. "Look at this," I said, pointing to the footprints that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. "They lead straight into that crevasse. Maybe he's trying to show us something." Jake hesitated, glancing nervously at the dark maw of the crevasse. "Are you sure we want to do this? Could be dangerous." But something inside me refused to back down. "We need to know who he is and why he's here. He might be another lost soul like us." With a deep breath, I began to follow the footprints, the others trailing behind me with a mix of reluctance and concern. The crevasse was narrow and treacherous, the walls slick with ice and snow. As we descended, the air grew colder, each breath a visible cloud in the freezing darkness. The only light came from the faint red glow that seemed to emanate from the very ground beneath us. After what felt like an eternity, we reached the bottom of the crevasse, emerging into a hidden cavern illuminated by a ghostly blue light. The space was vast, with icicles hanging from the ceiling like crystalline daggers and frozen stalactites jutting out from the walls. In the center of the cavern stood a small, ancient shrine, adorned with frost-covered carvings and candles that burned with an otherworldly flame. There, at the altar, stood the man we had seen earlier, his form more distinct in the eerie light. His eyes, still glowing red, now held a profound sadness that resonated deep within me. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice echoing softly in the cavern. He turned to face us, his expression a mixture of sorrow and determination. I am Elias Winters, a spirit bound to this place by a tragic fate. Decades ago, I led my family through this very storm, seeking refuge in the mountains, but we were caught in its wrath, and I was the only one to survive. My sorrow and guilt have tethered me to this shrine. Unable to move on, Sarah stepped forward, her fear tempered by empathy. Is there a way to help you find peace? Elias nodded slowly, his eyes reflecting the flickering candles. Yes, to release my spirit. You must honor my family's memory and ensure that their stories are never forgotten. Light these candles in their names and remember the sacrifices they made. Understanding the gravity of the situation, we gathered around the altar, lighting the candles and offering silent prayers for Elias and his family. As the last candle was lit, a wave of warmth spread through the cavern, the cold giving way to a comforting embrace. The ghostly blue light intensified, surrounding Elias with a radiant glow. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice filled with gratitude. "May your hearts be as strong as mine." With those final words, Elias began to fade, his form dissolving into the light until he was nothing more than a memory. The cavern seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as the shrine shimmered with a renewed sense of peace. As we made our way back to the surface, the storm had subsided, the first light of dawn breaking through the remnants of the night. The snow-covered landscape was serene, the mountains standing tall and unyielding against the new day. We reached the edge of the crevasse, the footprints now just a faint imprint in the snow, leading back into the abyss. Exhausted but fulfilled, we packed up our gear and began the trek back to our camp. The memory of Elias and his family's story etched into our hearts. The experience had not only tested our courage but had also deepened our bond, reminding us of the fragile line between life and death, and the enduring power of compassion. In the days that followed, we shared our story with the local community, ensuring that Elias Winters and his family were no longer forgotten. The legend of the mysterious mountaineer became a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of remembering those who came before us. It was a story of loss, redemption, and the unbreakable ties that bind us all. Even in the most desolate of places, every winter, as the first snowflakes begin to fall, I think back to that fateful expedition. The image of Elias Winters, standing at the edge of the storm, serves as a haunting yet hopeful reminder that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, there is always a chance for peace and closure. And as I continue my adventures, exploring the untamed wilderness, I carry with me the lessons learned from the mysterious mountaineer, a beacon guiding me through the darkness, illuminating the path towards understanding and compassion. Story number 5. The House on Lonely Plains. Winter in the Midwest is unforgiving. The roads stretch endlessly under a blanket of snow, the wind howling like a chorus of lost souls. As a long-haul truck driver, I've seen my fair share of desolate highways and abandoned stretches of land. But nothing could have prepared me for the night I stumbled upon the House on Lonely Plains. It was late December, and I was making my way down Route 66, hauling a load of electronics from Chicago to Los Angeles. The miles ticked by under the hum of my 18-wheeler, the radio playing static-filled tunes that seemed to echo the emptiness outside my cab. Fatigue had set in, and I decided it was time to pull over for some much-needed rest. The sun had dipped below the horizon hours ago, leaving the sky a deep, velvety black punctuated by the occasional shimmer of stars. The temperature had plummeted, turning the asphalt into a slick, icy surface. I scanned the roadside for a suitable spot and finally spotted a small gravel area bordered by tall, barren trees. It seemed like a perfect place to spend the night, remote enough to avoid any unwanted attention. As I parked and shut off the engine, a sense of unease settled over me. The isolation was palpable. The only sounds the distant howling of the wind and the occasional creak of the old highway signs swaying in the storm. I grabbed my thermos of coffee and stepped out into the biting cold, my breath forming visible puffs in the frigid air. That's when I saw it. A small house nestled between two giant oaks, barely visible in the darkness. It looked oddly out of place, with its quaint porch and warm, flickering lights that spilled out onto the snowy ground. The house was old, its wooden siding weathered by time and elements, but there was something almost inviting about it amidst the desolation. Curiosity got the better of me. I had heard stories of ghost houses and abandoned dwellings along these lonely roads, but I'd always dismissed them as mere folklore. Tonight, however, something compelled me to take a closer look. Perhaps it was the loneliness of the night or the eerie silence that seemed to call out to me. I approached cautiously, the crunch of snow under my boots breaking the stillness. The porch light cast long shadows, dancing eerily in the weak winter light. I knocked on the door, expecting no response. To my surprise, the door creaked open slowly, revealing a dimly lit interior. The warmth from inside was a stark contrast to the cold outside, and I could see the remnants of a recent meal on a table in the living room, plates with half-eaten food, glasses of water, and a scattering of utensils. It was as if someone had left in a hurry, abandoning the house without a trace. My heart pounded in my chest as I stepped inside, the door swinging shut behind me with a finality that sent chills down my spine. The house was small but meticulously maintained. The furniture was antique, each piece carefully arranged as if expecting guests at any moment. The air smelled faintly of vanilla and something metallic, an odd combination that heightened my sense of unease. I walked through the rooms, my flashlight illuminating the space but offering no clues as to who had lived here or why they had left so suddenly. In the kitchen, I noticed a diary lying open on the table, its pages filled with neat, precise handwriting. I picked it up, flipping through the entries dated back several months. The last entry caught my eye, December 15th, 2022. Tonight, the storm is fiercer than ever. I've lost track of time, and the howling wind makes it difficult to sleep. The lights seem to flicker with a life of their own, and sometimes I swear I hear footsteps echoing through the halls. Maybe it's just my imagination, worn thin by the isolation. I must stay strong and get through the night. A shiver ran down my spine. The diary suggested that someone had been staying here recently, possibly seeking refuge from the storm. But where were they now? Determined to find answers, I continued my exploration, moving towards the back of the house. There, I discovered a staircase leading to the attic. The door was slightly ajar, and a faint glow emanated from within. My curiosity intensified, overriding the growing fear that gnawed at my instincts. I ascended the stairs, each step creaking under my weight. The attic was spacious, filled with old trunks and boxes stacked haphazardly against the walls. In the center of the room stood an old, ornate mirror, its surface dusty but still reflecting a clear image. As I approached, the temperature seemed to drop even further, my breath visible in the chilly air. Staring into the mirror, I felt a presence behind me. I turned slowly, heart racing, but there was no one there, only the empty attic bathed in the dim light. I dismissed it as a trick of the mind, the isolation playing tricks on my perception. But as I gazed back into the mirror, the reflection shifted. Instead of my own image, I saw a man standing behind me, his eyes hollow and his expression one of profound sorrow. "Help me," he whispered, his voice echoing softly in the attic. I spun around, but once again, there was no one there. Panic surged through me as I backed away from the mirror, my mind racing to make sense of what I was seeing. The air grew colder, the chill intensifying until it felt like icy fingers were wrapping around my spine. I turned to leave the attic, but the door slammed shut with a deafening bang, trapping me inside. The room plunged into darkness as the flashlight flickered and died, leaving me in complete blackness. The whispers grew louder, filling the space with their haunting plea. "Please, help me find peace." Desperation clawed at me as I fumbled for my phone. using it as a makeshift flashlight. The screen barely illuminated the room, casting eerie shadows on the walls. I called out for help, my voice trembling with fear, but the only response was the relentless whispering that seemed to emanate from all around me. In a panic, I pounded on the door, trying to break free from the oppressive atmosphere. But no matter how hard I tried, the door remained steadfast, refusing to budge. The whispers morphed into mournful cries, their intensity overwhelming as the presence of the man from the mirror enveloped me. Tears streamed down my face as I realized that the house was more than just an abandoned shelter. It was a prison for lost souls, bound by tragedy and unable to move on. The man's plea echoed in my mind, his sorrow a palpable force that pressed against my very being. Summoning every ounce of courage, I focused on the mirror, the only link to the spirit that haunted this place. "What do you need from me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The mirror shimmered, and the man's image appeared once more, his eyes pleading. "Remember us? Share our story. Help us find peace." Understanding dawned on me. To free these lost souls, their stories needed to be told, their memories preserved. I nodded, my resolve strengthening. "I'll make sure no one forgets what happened here." With a newfound determination, I began to document everything: the diary entries, the strange occurrences, and the haunting presence of the man in the mirror. I knew that escaping the house meant sharing its tragic tale with the world, ensuring that the spirits would finally find the peace they sought. Hours felt like days as I meticulously recorded every detail, my fingers numb from the cold and exhaustion. Finally, as dawn's first light began to seep through the attic window, the door creaked open, releasing me from the dark prison. The oppressive chill lifted, replaced by a warm, comforting breeze that filled the room. I descended the stairs, the house now bathed in the soft glow of morning light. The diary lay open on the table, its final entry glowing faintly as if acknowledging my presence. As I stepped outside, the house seemed to fade, dissolving into the snowy landscape until all that remained was the empty gravel lot. Shivering from the cold and the night's ordeal, I packed up my truck and drove away. The memory of the house on lonely plains etched into my mind. The desolate fields stretched out behind me, the house nowhere to be seen, as if it had never existed. In the days that followed, I shared my story with friends and fellow truckers, the incredulity in their eyes matched only by their fascination. The tale of the cursed house on Route 66 spread, becoming a local legend that served as both a warning and a testament to the enduring power of memory and compassion. Every winter, as the first snowflakes begin to fall and the roads grow treacherous, I think back to that fateful night. The house on Lonely Plains remains a haunting reminder of the thin veil that separates the living from the dead, and the responsibility we bear to honor those who have been lost. And as I continue my solitary journeys across the frozen highways, I carry with me the lessons learned from the cursed house, a beacon guiding me through the darkness, illuminating the path towards understanding and empathy for the restless souls that dwell in the shadows. Story number 6. The Song in the Deep Woods. Winter in Oregon had a way of cloaking the landscape in silence, a serene stillness that was both beautiful and unnerving. The dense forests, usually teeming with life, stood silent under a thick blanket of snow, their towering pines and sturdy oaks forming an impenetrable barrier against the world outside. As an avid camper and nature enthusiast, I relished these solitary escapes, finding solace in the isolation and the untouched beauty of the wilderness. Little did I know that one winter night would alter my perception of these woods forever. It was the beginning of December when my friends, Emma, Jake, and Lily, and I decided to embark on a camping trip deep into the heart of the Oregon wilderness. We had heard tales of hidden lakes and pristine trails that few dared to explore, stories that fueled our adventurous spirits. Armed with tents, warm clothing, ample supplies, and a sense of excitement, we set out with high hopes for a memorable winter retreat. The first few days were everything we had hoped for. We trekked through untouched snowdrifts, our laughter echoing through the silent trees. The days were filled with hiking, photography, and moments of pure joy as we connected with nature and each other. As night fell, we would gather around the campfire, sharing stories and enjoying the warmth against the biting cold. On the fourth night, as the sun dipped below the horizon and darkness enveloped the forest, we settled into our campsite near a small clearing. The air was crisp, and the silence was profound, broken only by the occasional crackle of the fire and the distant call of an owl. Wrapped in our blankets, we felt a sense of peace that only true isolation can bring. Around midnight, as the fire burned low and the shadows lengthened, Emma was the first to notice it, a faint, melodic singing drifting through the trees. At first, it was so soft that I thought I was imagining it, but as moments passed, the song grew more distinct. It was hauntingly beautiful, a melody that seemed both ancient and sorrowful, echoing through the stillness of the night. "Do you guys hear that?" Emma whispered, her eyes wide with curiosity and a hint of fear. Jake nodded, his expression puzzled. "Yeah, it's coming from over there," he said, pointing towards a dense cluster of trees a short distance away. Lily leaned forward, her interest piqued. "Maybe it's someone else out here," she suggested, though the idea of encountering another person in such remote wilderness felt unlikely. Despite our initial hesitation, the allure of the mysterious song was too strong to resist. We decided to follow the sound, hoping to discover its source. Grabbing our flashlights and bundling up tighter against the cold, we made our way through the snow, the soft melody guiding us deeper into the forest. The forest seemed to close in around us, the trees thickening and the path becoming less distinct. The singing continued, growing more ethereal and almost otherworldly as we ventured further. It was as if the song itself was leading us somewhere, an invisible hand guiding our steps through the snow-covered wilderness. After what felt like hours, the singing led us to a small clearing where a serene, frozen lake lay nestled among the trees. The moonlight reflected off the ice, casting a silvery glow that illuminated the entire area. In the center of the lake stood a figure, her form barely visible through the shimmering frost. She was clad in a flowing white gown, her hair cascading down her back like a silken waterfall, and her eyes held a depth of sorrow that sent chills down my spine. "Hello," I called out, my voice wavering slightly in the cold night air. The figure turned towards us, her gaze meeting mine with an intensity that made my heart race. Her lips moved, and the song ceased abruptly, replaced by a soft, sorrowful whisper that seemed to come from the depths of her soul. "Why have you come?" she asked, her voice gentle yet filled with an unspoken pain. Jake stepped forward, trying to mask his fear with a confident facade. "We heard your song. We wanted to see who was singing." She nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving ours. "I am Eliza. This lake was once a place of joy, where families gathered and friends shared laughter. But tragedy struck one winter, and now I am left to wander, bound to this frozen sanctuary." Emma, always the compassionate one, spoke up. "Is there something we can do to help you, Eliza?" Eliza's expression softened, and she gestured towards the lake. "There is a way to release me, but it requires remembering and honoring the lives lost here. Light a candle for each soul that was taken, and let their memories be carried by the wind." Understanding the gravity of her request, we quickly gathered materials to create makeshift candles. Using branches and bits of cloth soaked in oil from our supplies, we lit the candles and placed them around the edge of the lake, each flame flickering gently in the cold breeze. As we completed the ritual, the air seemed to lighten, the oppressive sadness lifting slightly. The candle's flames danced in the moonlight, casting warm glows that contrasted with the icy surroundings. Eliza watched us, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and lingering sorrow. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice carrying a sense of relief. "Your kindness has given me peace." With that, Eliza began to fade, her form becoming more translucent until she was nothing more than a shimmering mist that drifted across the lake. The lake itself began to thaw, the ice breaking apart as the morning sun began to rise, casting its golden light over the once frozen surface. As dawn broke, we stood in awe of the transformation that had taken place. The clearing was no longer a frozen, desolate landscape but a vibrant, thawed oasis teeming with life. The memories of the past had been honored, allowing Eliza to find the peace she had long sought. We packed up our campsite with a sense of fulfillment, knowing that we had played a part in bringing closure to a tragic story. The journey back through the forest felt lighter, the burden of the night's events lifted by the warmth of the rising sun. In the days that followed, we shared our experience with friends and fellow campers, the story of Eliza and the house on lonely plains becoming a cherished tale among those who ventured into the Oregon wilderness. It was a reminder that even in the most isolated places, the echoes of the past linger, yearning to be remembered and honored. Every winter, as the first snowflakes begin to fall, I think back to that night by the frozen lake. The haunting melody of Eliza's song serves as a poignant reminder of the power of memory and compassion, and the enduring bonds that connect us all, even across the veil of time and tragedy. And as I continue my adventures in the wilderness, I carry with me the lessons learned from the song in the deep woods, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of honoring those who have been lost. Story number 7. The Phantom Train in the Sky. Winter in the Texas Panhandle was a deceptive time of year. While the southern parts of the state basked in mild temperatures, the northern plains transformed into a frozen expanse of white, where the wind whispered secrets through the tall grasses and the nights stretched interminably under a canopy of stars. As a freelance journalist with a penchant for uncovering the obscure and the supernatural, I was drawn to stories that defied explanation. It was this very curiosity that led me to the heart of one such enigma, the Phantom Train in the Sky. I had always been fascinated by the legends that lingered in the shadows of the Texas landscape, tales of ghostly apparitions, unexplained phenomena, and the lingering spirits of the past were common around campfires and in the hushed conversations of small-town diners. But none intrigued me as much as the reports emanating from the desolate stretches of the Panhandle, where a spectral train was said to traverse the night sky without a trace of tracks below. The first account I encountered was from an elderly man named Hank Willis, a retired railroad worker who had spent his life working on the very rails that crisscrossed the Panhandle. Hank's stories were filled with nostalgia and a hint of fear, his eyes clouded with memories that refused to fade. He spoke of a night many decades ago when a severe snowstorm had swept through the region, trapping a passenger train on the tracks. The storm raged for days, and despite rescue efforts, the train was never found. Some said it was swallowed by the earth. Others believed it was taken by the spirits of the storm. What remained were tales of a phantom locomotive that would appear during the harshest winters, its lights gleaming in the dark sky and the haunting sound of its whistle echoing through the plains. Intrigued and determined to uncover the truth, I decided to spend a week in the nearest town to the reported sightings, Coldwater, a sparse settlement where the cold seemed to seep into your very bones. The town was a relic of a bygone era, with buildings that stood stoically against the relentless wind and snow. The residents were a tight-knit community, wary of outsiders but willing to share their stories over a warm cup of coffee. My base of operations was a small cabin on the outskirts of town, away from the prying eyes of the few locals who dared to venture out after dark. The first 2 nights passed uneventfully, the silence of the plains broken only by the howling wind and the occasional creak of the old cabin settling into the frozen ground. But on the 3rd night, as I sat by the fireplace poring over maps and old newspaper clippings, a soft, rhythmic clattering reached my ears. At first, I dismissed it as the sounds of the storm, or perhaps the cabin's own structural noises amplified by the cold. But as the minutes ticked by, the clattering grew louder, more deliberate. It was unmistakable, the unmistakable sound of train wheels on tracks. accompanied by the mournful wail of a distant whistle. My heart raced as I peered out the window, but all I saw was the swirling snow and the inky blackness of the night sky. Determined to capture evidence, I grabbed my camera and flashlight and stepped outside into the biting cold. The snow crunched under my boots as I made my way towards the source of the sound, my breath visible in the frigid air. The plains stretched out before me, a vast, empty canvas under the star-studded sky. Every step I took was measured, the eerie stillness amplifying my sense of isolation. As I trudged through the deepening snow, the sounds of the phantom train became clearer, almost as if it was following me. The clattering grew more intense, the whistle more pronounced, leading me to a small clearing surrounded by tall, skeletal trees. There, suspended in mid-air above the ground, was the ghostly image of a train, its locomotive shining with an unearthly blue light, the cars trailing behind like phantoms themselves. I froze, unable to tear my eyes away from the spectral vision. The train moved with purpose, chugging forward along invisible tracks that shimmered beneath it. The lights of the cars flickered, casting eerie reflections on the snow-covered ground. And through it all, the whistle wailed a haunting melody that seemed to tug at the very fabric of my soul. As the train continued its silent journey across the sky, I felt an inexplicable pull, a mix of fear and fascination that compelled me to follow. I climbed onto a nearby hill, the perfect vantage point to observe the phenomenon. The air around me grew colder, the wind biting through my layers and making my skin tingle with frost. Despite the chill, I remained rooted to the spot, my camera trained on the ethereal locomotive. Minutes turned into hours as the phantom train made its rounds, appearing and disappearing with each pass. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant echo of the whistle and the soft hum of the train's movement. I began to wonder if the stories were true, that the train was a lingering spirit, eternally bound to the tracks that no longer existed. But as dawn approached, the true horror began to unfold. The last thing I saw before the first light of day pierced the darkness was the train's whistle silencing abruptly, the locomotive halting in midair as if caught in an invisible snare. The blue lights dimmed, and the train began to disintegrate, particles of light and snow swirling into the morning breeze until nothing remained but the vast, empty plains. Shaken to my core, I retreated back to the cabin, the memory of the ghostly train seared into my mind. The following days were a blur of interviews and research, each new piece of information adding depth to the mystery. Locals spoke of vanished trains, of spirits unable to move on, and of the unforgiving power of the winter storms that could trap anything and anyone in their icy grip. One evening, as I reviewed my footage, I noticed something chilling, a faint, shadowy figure standing on the rear platform of the phantom train. The figure was barely visible, but its presence was unmistakable. It was a man, dressed in an old-fashioned conductor's uniform, his face obscured by the brim of a hat. His eyes, though unseen, seemed to bore into me, filled with an unspoken sorrow and desperation. I replayed the footage, heart pounding, but the figure never appeared again. Had I imagined it? A trick of the light or my own overactive imagination fueled by the day's events? Or was it a glimpse into the very souls that haunted the Texas plains, forever bound to their spectral locomotive? Determined to uncover more, I decided to return to the clearing the following night, armed with better equipment and a resolve to face whatever truths lay hidden in the darkness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the snow, I made my way back to the site where the phantom train had appeared. The cold was even more intense this time, the wind whispering through the trees like a mournful lament. As midnight approached, the familiar sounds began, the rhythmic clattering of wheels and the wail of the whistle. My pulse quickened as I watched the sky, waiting for the ghostly train to make its appearance once more. And there it was, gliding effortlessly through the night, its blue lights piercing the darkness like beacons of the otherworldly. This time, however, there was no detachment. The conductor's figure stood out more clearly, his presence more defined as the train moved silently across the sky. I felt a surge of empathy, a connection to the lost souls that lingered in the winter's embrace. It was as if the train was not just a haunting apparition but a vessel of memories and unfinished stories. Seeking acknowledgement from the living, summoning my courage, I began to speak, my voice trembling but steady. "Elias Winters," I called out, recalling the name from Hank's stories. "I see you. What do you need?" For a moment, there was no response. Then, the train slowed, the conductor's figure turning to face me. Though no sound escaped his lips, the meaning was clear. He was reaching out, desperate for understanding and closure. The air around me seemed to hum with energy, the very essence of the spirits intertwining with the cold night. In that instant, I understood that the phantom train was a reminder of the past's lingering presence, a call to remember and honor those who had been lost to the unforgiving winters of the Texas Panhandle. It wasn't just a story to be told, but a legacy to be preserved, ensuring that the spirits of the phantom locomotive found the peace they so desperately sought. As the first light of dawn began to break, the train's form shimmered and began to fade, the conductor's figure dissolving into the morning light. The blue glow diminished until it was nothing more than a distant memory, leaving behind a sense of calm and resolution. The plains, once again, were silent, the mystery of the phantom train in the sky left to rest beneath the vast expanse of the Texan winter. Driving back to Coldwater, the memory of the night's events lingered, a haunting yet beautiful reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead. The stories of the phantom train were no longer just tales of ghostly apparitions but a testament to the enduring human spirit and the power of remembrance. And as I penned the final lines of my article, I knew that the legend of the phantom train in the sky would continue to echo through the winters of Texas, a spectral journey that forever binds the past with the present.